Community of Naples. Denise, thank you for that warm introduction. And my gratitude to both Denise and the board for the invitation to serve and minister to you today as your guest speaker. And thank you, masked and unmasked, for blessing us with your presence and participation as we come into a time of spiritual fellowship and community today. My talk and teaching is aligned with the theme for October, an awakened life, an awakened world. And how appropriate is it that in 2021, in May 2021, we are being invited to revisit the idea of being aware of our awakening and living from that consciousness in our everyday daily lives. How's it going? How's 2021 unfolding for you? I was amused to see a Facebook posting recently that went something like this: OMG, 2021, what a disaster. It's like 2020 turned 21 and started binge drinking. I believe we find ourselves in 2021 in the divine paradox of disappointment and desire. Disappointment and desire. Disappointment may be, from time to time, how things are manifesting and unfolding in our material world, and a reawakening of the desire for that which is divinely true, divinely right, and divinely good. Apparently I had a timer on. Boy, things are really going well today. You see, like most things in life, and one of the blessings that we have in our New Thought philosophy is that our intention, more often than not, determines the experience that we have. And so when we look at the totality of 2021, it's a maybe, maybe not situation. I'm reminded of a story of a village elder in a Mongolian village who was the owner of a prized white mare. And one day the mare went missing. And that evening the villagers came over to his yurt. A yurt is a Mongolian tent, a round tent. These can be taken down and transported, and you can nomadically move around if you want to. The village came over to his yurt and expressed and shared their absolute regret and sorrow for this terrible thing that had happened to his family. And he took a moment, and his response was, well, maybe, maybe not. 3 days later, the mare returned, followed by this beautiful, black, majestic stallion. And the village elder was now the proud owner of a white mare and a beautiful, black, majestic stallion. And that evening, the villagers came over to his yurt, and they said that they were so happy for the wonderful blessing and good fortune that had been visited on him and his family. And the village elder said, maybe, maybe not. A few days later, his 16-year-old son took it upon himself to break in the stallion. And of course, you might have figured it out by now, the stallion threw him, he fell to the ground and broke his leg in 3 places. And that evening, the village came over to his yurt, stood outside his front door and said how sorry and how grateful they were for this terrible thing that visited itself upon him and his family. And his response was, maybe not. One more and then we're done. A month later, the news went out in Mongolia that war was imminent. The army would be coming around to recruit young men to join the fight against a neighboring country. They came to the village to recruit every young man 16 years or older, and his son, who had suffered that terrible injury, was not required to enlist because of his injury. And his response to that was, of course, maybe not. You see, 2021 can possibly be for us a divinely anointed and appointed time, seeded and pregnant with divine potential and possibility. A blessed time for us to step out of what is past and old and no longer serves our best and highest good, and to step into what is now and new and forward into what is next, better, and best. If we set our intention and our desire to do so. This is a time for faith. Am I on the standing mic or the walking mic? This is a time for faith. I apologize, I'm a walker. I find that a lot of my inspiration comes live, and sometimes I have to walk to find the divine Wi-Fi, to get the best signal. It's really true, I spend a lot of time during the week preparing my talks, and very often I'll get home on a Sunday afternoon and review them, and my first reaction was, where did that come from? So there's a divine thing that happens when you're a minister and a speaker and a teacher. When you are at home alone preparing your message for the day, it's one thing. When you walk into the sanctuary and together we've created this sacred space, it's a whole new live situation, right? And if you want to serve the needs of your community, you have to make sure that in your teaching on Sunday, you have left sacred space for divine insight and inspiration while you're standing at the podium. And to trust that. In the very beginning, I remember I used to write every single word down and rehearse it a few times. And then I'd be standing at the podium and I'd get this inspiration and I'd go, no. There's no space for that. And I learned this wonderful lesson once. At the hug line every Sunday, I had an angel who would come through every single Sunday, hug me and tell me how bad my Sunday message was. And where he thought it could be improved. And then, one Sunday morning, I showed up for my Sunday talk having printed the wrong message. And I stood up at the podium and opened the cover and realized that it wasn't the message that was prepared for that day. And so I winged it for 25 minutes. And that day, he came through the hug line, he hugged me and he said, not only my best message, but quite certainly the best message he'd ever heard. And so it helped me understand that a lot of what the divine has prepared for us on Sunday mornings doesn't happen on Tuesday evening or Thursday evening or Friday morning. Those are just the bones and the skeleton. The meat happens right here in this room as I'm standing here right now, and energetically and consciously we are connecting and collaborating together. And so returning to my teaching for today, this is a time for faith. 2021 is a time for us to return to that essential, foundational, spiritual practice and principle of faith. It is a time for the spiritual integrity and a time for the spiritual authenticity that comes in and through faith. This is not a time to fake it until we make it. This is a time to faith it until we make it. Right? This is a time for spiritual integrity and authenticity like we've not had before. It is my sincere impression that what is next for us is better and best than what was past. Faith is an extremely empowering spiritual principle, but it only has effect in your life if you practice it. When we practice divine principles, they fulfill their divine purpose. Divine principles are like seeds planted in the soil and the consciousness of our hearts and our minds. When we take time to cultivate the soil of the heart, the seed will sprout, it will grow, it will flower, and it will fruit, and it will produce the divine harvest of good it was ordained and anointed to produce. Faith allows us to behold what is next, better, and best. Faith allows us to believe what is next, better, and best. And faith allows us to become what is next, better, and best. Of course, moving away from what is past, living more fully invested in the present, and then stepping forward in faith into what is the future requires us to navigate some obstacles. Yes? And so faith is also our spiritual GPS, our God positioning system. Yes? When we are guided by faith, we are enabled and empowered to navigate our way through leaving behind what no longer serves us, receiving what is now present for our future, highest, best, and good. Faith empowers us to do that. And this is how we live an awakened life, when we live empowered by faith. And that empowering is a transformational experience. I do want to take a moment to shout out. I'm seeing some familiar faces of old friends from the Fort Myers region. Thank you so much for coming out today and visiting me and us here. I hope to get a chance to say hello to you afterwards. Where was I? Yes. And so faith is so powerful and so important to the spiritual integrity and authenticity we need now more than ever. Here's the very, very cool thing about divine principles. I shared with you that they are like seeds. You know that a seed contains everything it needs to become what it is divinely purposed to become? When you plant an acorn in the soil of your garden, the acorn doesn't need you to tell it how to be an acorn. It doesn't need you to tell it how to become an oak tree. It has that divine pattern, that divine presence, and that divine power within it. It simply needs you to provide the seeding, the soil, for it to fulfill its divine purpose. It's exactly the same for spiritual principles in our lives. They have no benefit to us unless we commit to practice them. Unless we commit to connect with them and communicate with them and collaborate with them and allowing them to do their work in and through us. God can only do for us what God can do in us and through us. Denise, I think that might be a direct quote of your teaching last Sunday. I think I heard it in there somewhere. And so there's something that is ours to do. Often we are disappointed with the material manifestations in our lives, with the material conditions and circumstances in our lives, in our ministry, and in our world. And the divine is calling us to be more active. The divine is calling us to be activists and advocates for that which is divinely true, right, and good. Reminding us that we are disappointed with the results we're not getting from the work we're not doing. Yes? We are disappointed with the results we're not getting from the work we're not doing. The beauty of the New Thought philosophy is that God is infinite and omnipotently good and can do anything in and through us. God is calling us into this divine collaboration. God is calling us into this divine cooperation. God is saying to us, let me demonstrate my good in and through you. Come into an awakened life experience and be transformed by my presence and power as it does its work in and through you. Last Sunday, Reverend Denise talked very eloquently about the transformational experience and caterpillars and butterflies. When I think of transformation and caterpillars and butterflies, a cartoon comes to mind. It's a cartoon of a caterpillar and a butterfly sitting at a table in a coffee shop. And the air quote above the caterpillar is, "My goodness, how you've changed." Right? We all like change. We understand that change is part of living and life and the human experience. We are all curious and courageous when it comes to change. We just love stepping out of the box of our comfort zone to explore what's out there. And yet within us, there's that part that tells us that is where the magic happens. Another cartoon comes to mind. 2 circles. The first circle over here, your comfort zone. The other circle out here, where the magic happens. Right? God is asking us. God is inviting us. God is taking our disappointments and our desire in the divine dance, the divine paradox, and encouraging us to step out of our comfort zone, especially in 2021. To step out of our comfort zone into that place where magic happens, where we are able to explore divine potential and possibility because it's already there, waiting for us to embrace it, to connect with it, and to collaborate with it. And faith as our spiritual GPS, our God positioning system, will guide us through that which holds us back, releasing into that which takes us forward, receiving, that we might move on and upward into our divine best and highest good. And you might say, I'm not ready. Well, who is? And when will you be? And if not now, when? And if not you, who? And so we see in the truth of this year that faces us a lot of regret, a lot of heartache, a lot of suffering for a lot of people. But yet in the dynamic of our humanity and our divinity, we see this divine opportunity. And it's inviting us to embrace it. It's inviting us to step out of some old ideas, to open our heart to some new, bold ideas. It's inviting us to recognize that some of these old ideas no longer serve our best and highest good. It's encouraging us to just consider that there's a newness happening. And in that newness lies our transformation. And in that newness lies our transcendence and our transition from what is old to what is new, next, better, and best. I have a dream. Like Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream. It's a dream that touches my heart every single day. It's a divine dream that desires to be dreamed and demonstrated by and through me. A dream and a vision that is seeded with divine good. It desires to be dreamed and demonstrated by each of us, individually, and all of us collectively. In its demonstration is the transformation of every dimension of our being and every aspect of our human experience. This dream calls us to live open-hearted in the awakened awareness of our oneness with God and in the curiosity and courage of transforming who we are, how we live, how we do ministry, how we show up in the world, and the results that we achieve individually and collectively. It's a dream that uplifts our vision to look forward, upward, and onward, and not back in regret and disappointment. To look forward in hope, in faith, beholding, believing, and becoming the vision of what is new and next for each one of us. Well, you might be sitting there thinking, that's all very blah, blah, blah. All very happy clappy. Easy weezy. I'm not sure where that easy weezy thing came from. How do I make this manifestation in my life? How do I incorporate this manifestation in my ministry? How do I make it possible in our world? I'm a golfer. I believe I am dealing with some karmic issues from a previous life. I believe my passion for golf is just one of the ways that I'm working out some bad karma from a previous life. One of the very cool things about golf is that when your golf swing goes awry, and it happens often, your coach will always tell you, go back to the basics. Go back to the foundation. Go back to the principles and practice those principles. As we open our individual and collective hearts this year in 2021 to the divine potential and possibility that's trying to touch our hearts with desire, we need to stick to the basics. Go back to the foundational practices. We need to live in divine conscious awareness, being divinely attuned through meditation, divinely aligned through prayer, divinely connected, plugged in and powered up, collaborating with divine presence and power, awakened, alive, in all that we think, in all that we feel, in all that we say, and all that we do. We need to claim the integrity and authenticity of spirit and bring ourselves into alignment with that. In closing today, my benediction and blessing for you is the quote from the New Thought writer James Allen. Dream your lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be, and the prophecy of what you shall at last achieve. And together we affirm, and so it is. Thank you. As Jesse and Amy prepare to lead us into a time of prayer and realization, I said to Jamie this morning, I shared with him that the song that they chose for our prayer today was a song that was very instrumental in my own spiritual awareness and realization. I came into New Thought philosophy through yoga practice and the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. And the music of Sanatam Kaur was always on my playlist. And this particular song was number one on my morning playlist for about 6 months. I invite you to open your heart to its words and inspiration.
It's by thy grace that I sing. It's by thy grace that I sing. It's by thy grace that I sing your holy name. It's by thy grace that I feel. It's by thy grace that I feel. It's by thy grace that I feel your holy name.
Relaxing your body, quieten your mind, center your awareness in the sacred space of your heart. invite the recognition and realization that there is only one God, one divine presence, one divine power, active in the universe, in you and your life. God the good, omnipotent. Be heart-centered in the peace of that knowing.
Someday the day shall come when all the glory shall be thine. People will say it is yours, and I shall deny not mine. It's by thy grace that I sing. Oh, it's by thy grace that I sing. It's by thy grace that I sing your holy name. Allah, Jehovah, Rama, Satanama. Allah, Jehovah, Rama, Satanama. Peace to all, life to all, love to all.
Heart-centered again to the feeling of hope for 2021 and what is next and better and best in us, our lives, our ministry, and in the world. Invite a feeling of gratitude. Gratitude for the good that is and the good that is coming to be. Today we speak this word of truth into the law of life. In faith we anoint our desire and intention for a life, a ministry, and a world demonstrating greater divine truth, right and good for all. In peace and gratitude we release this faithful anointing into divine presence and power. God the omnipotent, knowing with assurance, ease and grace that it is done, and so it is.
Peace to all, life to all, love to all. Peace to all, life to all, love to all.
Amen.
Amen.